number one, Kobe and Shaq were still
in their prime.
Where LeBron is still a great player. Like, LeBron is still one of the, if not the best player in the NBA. You can always make that argument. Arguably the greatest player of all time. You can make that argument. But he is in year 19, if I'm not mistaken, year 19. Yeah. And so they weren't in their prime. So right there alone, I thought was different. Where, y'all got them two young hogs in their prime going at it.
Gary Payton just said something about LeBron James that has the entire basketball world in absolute shock. The Hall of Fame point guard didn't hold back, questioning whether the so-called king could have even survived in his era. And what he said next is causing a media firestorm that LeBron can't ignore. The gloves are off, the respect is gone, and what started as a simple question has turned into the most explosive debate of 2025. This isn't just trash talk. This is a legendary player dismantling LeBron's legacy piece by piece.
Jordan, man, in my rookie year in Seattle.
Okay.
I played about 8 minutes, had no points, about 2 assists or whatever, and he had 35 and like 12 or something like that, and he looked over and just said, "Welcome to the NBA. It ain't gonna be that easy." And when you get into pros and you think that you were better than most people in college. The pros are different because they were the best people in college too, and they at your same.
It was a cold January morning in 2025 when Gary Payton sat down for what seemed like a routine podcast interview. Nobody expected what was about to happen. The host, trying to stir up some engaging content, asked a question that's been floating around basketball circles for years. Gary, do you think LeBron James could dominate in the 90s the way he's dominated the modern era? The Glove's reaction was immediate. First, he laughed. Not a friendly chuckle, but the kind of laugh that says, "You've got to be kidding me." Then his face turned serious, and what came out of his mouth next would send shockwaves through the basketball community that are still reverberating today. "You wouldn't survive our era," Gary said, looking directly into the camera. Not, he might struggle. Not, it would be different. No, Gary Payton flat out said LeBron wouldn't survive. Now, this isn't some random analyst making hot takes for clicks. This is Gary Payton, 9-time All-Star, 9-time All-Defensive First Team, the only point guard to ever win Defensive Player of the Year, a man who went toe-to-toe with Michael Jordan in the finals and actually gave him problems. When the Glove talks about defense and toughness, you listen. But here's where it gets interesting. Gary didn't just drop that bomb and move on. He kept going, and with every word he dug deeper into LeBron's game, his mentality, and whether he really deserves all the praise that gets heaped on him day after day. Within hours, social media exploded. Twitter was a battleground. Instagram comment sections turned into war zones. You had the older generation, the fans who grew up watching 90s basketball, nodding their heads in agreement. Finally, someone said it. LeBron is soft compared to what we had. Then you had the younger generation, LeBron's fans, who felt like their hero was being disrespected by a bitter old head who couldn't accept that the game had evolved. GP is just jealous. LeBron would cook him in any era. But neither side was ready for what Gary Payton said next.
The outcome of that is that with me, if I'm coaching them, I'll double them. I'll get the ball out of their hands. See, nowadays, what do all NBA teams do? They just switch. They put a big man on a guard. Then they try to say, guard this outstanding or excellent score. Ain't gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So when we used to play, we used to hedge and just trap.
Gary Payton wasn't done, not even close. He doubled down on everything. And this is where the interview went from controversial to absolutely nuclear. "Let me tell you something about our era," Gary continued, leaning forward in his chair. "Hand-checking was legal. You could put your hands on a guy and actually play defense. None of this touch foul nonsense, where a guy drives to the basket and if you breathe on him wrong, it's 2 free throws." He painted a picture of a different game entirely, a game where physicality wasn't just allowed, it was expected, where if you drove to the rim, you better be ready to get hit and hit hard. No flagrant fouls for a hard foul, no players getting ejected for playing tough defense, just pure, unfiltered basketball. LeBron drives to the basket now, and guys move out of the way because they don't want to pick up a foul, Gary explained. In our day, you're getting met at the rim by someone who's trying to send a message, and if you can't handle that, you better stay on the perimeter. But then Gary went even further. He started talking about specific scenarios, painting vivid pictures of what would happen if you dropped LeBron James into a game from 1995. Imagine LeBron trying to back down Charles Oakley in the post, Gary said with a smirk. Oak would have eaten him alive. Not because LeBron isn't strong, he is, but because Oak would have been in his head, talking trash, throwing elbows, making every possession a physical war. And the refs, they'd let it play. He mentioned the bad boy Pistons, the way they had a literal playbook called the Jordan Rules, designed to beat the hell out of Michael Jordan every time he touched the ball. Hard fouls, clotheslines, whatever it took to slow him down. You think LeBron could handle that? Getting knocked down 5, 6, 7 times a game? Getting up every single time with no complaints, no load management, no sitting out because his ankle's a little sore? And there it was, the load management comment, the one thing that drives old school players absolutely crazy about the modern NBA. The idea that players today sit out games to preserve their bodies, while guys in the 90s played through everything short of broken bones. Gary's voice got more intense. We played 82 games, and then the playoffs. You didn't sit out because you were tired. You didn't take nights off because it was the second game of a back-to-back. You played. That was your job. The basketball world was watching this interview in real time, and you could feel the temperature rising. This wasn't just an old player reminiscing about the good old days. This was a direct assault on everything LeBron James represents in the modern NBA. Social media went into overdrive. Clips from the interview were being shared thousands of times per minute. Sports debate shows were already planning their segments. This was the content goldmine everyone had been waiting for. But here's the thing, Gary Payton had receipts. He wasn't just talking out of emotion. He had examples, statistics in his head, and memories of actual games that backed up everything he was saying. And that made it so much harder for LeBron's defenders to dismiss. One fan commented, "GP is speaking facts and y'all just don't want to hear it." Another fired back, "LeBron is 6'9", 250 pounds of pure muscle. He'd dominate any era. GP is delusional." The divide was real, the debate was raging, and Gary Payton, he was just getting started.
Forget the Jordan LeBron comparisons per se. I've never seen Jordan run from a defensive assignment. In my opinion, I don't want to use the word running because I'm not trying to disrespect LeBron, but I will say this. There have been many, many occasions where I would have liked to have seen him accepting the tougher defensive assignment, and that is not something that he has been prone to do. If anybody would know whether or not that statement is true, it would be you, GP. Your thoughts?
Well, it is true.
Now, let's be real for a second. Gary Payton isn't the first former player to criticize LeBron James. We've heard it before from various legends who think the modern game is too soft. But this feels different. This cuts deeper. Why? Because Gary isn't questioning LeBron's skill. He's not saying LeBron can't play basketball. What he's attacking is something far more personal, LeBron's toughness, his mental fortitude, his ability to handle adversity the way the greats of the past did. And in the world of basketball, especially when you're chasing the ghost of Michael Jordan for the GOAT title, toughness matters. It matters a lot. Look, LeBron is talented, Gary admitted during the interview. Nobody's saying he can't play, but talent alone doesn't make you the greatest ever. Jordan had talent and toughness. Kobe had talent and that killer mentality. You think those guys would have survived in our era? Absolutely, no question. Then came the pause, the moment where Gary looked directly at the camera and delivered the line that's now being quoted everywhere. But LeBron? I'm not so sure. That statement hit like a freight train because it wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about legacy. It was about whether LeBron James truly belongs in the conversation with Michael Jordan, or if he's been benefiting from playing in an era that's simply easier. The load management angle kept coming back up. Gary couldn't let it go, and honestly, can you blame him? When you look at the numbers, it's staggering. LeBron has sat out more games for rest in the past 5 seasons than Gary Payton sat out in his entire career due to anything other than actual injuries. "We didn't have load management," Gary repeated, almost in disbelief. "You know what we had? Ice baths, tape, and the understanding that you show up for your team every single night, because that's what professionals do." Fan polls started popping up everywhere. Who's right, Gary Payton or LeBron James? The results? Shockingly divided. It wasn't the blowout in LeBron's favor that you might expect. The older demographic sided heavily with Gary. The younger crowd defended LeBron. But there was a significant chunk in the middle who were actually starting to question things they'd never questioned before. Comments flooded in. "Never thought about it this way, but GP has a point about the physicality. LeBron plays in a finesse era. Facts. Y'all are crazy. LeBron is 6'9" and built like a tank. He'd dominate any era." But here's what made this even more fascinating: the silence from LeBron's camp. Usually, when someone comes at the king, there's a response. Maybe not from LeBron directly, but from his media allies, his teammates, his supporters in the industry. This time, crickets. No tweets, no Instagram stories, no cryptic quotes, nothing. And that silence spoke volumes. It made people wonder, does LeBron not have a good response? Is there truth to what Gary's saying that even LeBron knows he can't refute? Or is he just taking the high road and refusing to engage with what some might call hater talk? The debate raged on, and with each passing day, more people were picking sides. This wasn't going away. If anything, it was growing bigger. Here's what most people are missing in all of this drama. Gary Payton isn't just some bitter old player trying to stay relevant. There's actual context here that makes his words carry so much more weight. First, let's talk about Gary's competitive nature. This is a man who built his entire Hall of Fame career on one principle: I will outwork you, I will out-tough you, and I will break you mentally before the game is even over. The glove didn't get his nickname because he was friendly. He got it because when he defended you, it felt like you couldn't breathe. He took pride in making offensive superstars have terrible nights. He lived for those matchups against the best players in the league. And he never backed down, never took a play off, never made excuses. So when Gary looks at the modern NBA and sees players sitting out games to rest, or sees the lack of hand-checking, or watches guys get to the free throw line on minimal contact, it genuinely bothers him. Not because he hates LeBron, but because it feels like the competitive spirit he treasured is disappearing. Now, here's something interesting that sources close to the situation have mentioned, but isn't being widely reported yet. Gary Payton and LeBron James have actually had a decent relationship over the years. They've talked at various events, shown mutual respect in public settings, and Gary has even praised LeBron's basketball IQ in past interviews. So this isn't personal beef in the traditional sense. This isn't Shaq and Dwight Howard going at each other. This is something different. This is generational pride. Gary represents an era of basketball that feels like it's being forgotten, an era where toughness was currency, where playing through pain was expected, where defense wasn't just allowed, but celebrated. And when he sees the modern game, and when he sees LeBron being crowned as potentially the greatest ever, it feels like an insult to everything he and his peers accomplished. It's not that today's players can't play, one former player who knows Gary well explained in a recent interview. It's that they don't have to face the same challenges we did. The game has changed in ways that favor offense, favor superstars, and favor load management over warrior mentality. And guys like Gary feel like that needs to be acknowledged in these GOAT conversations. And here's the deeper argument that Gary is really making, even if he's not saying it explicitly. Has the NBA gotten too soft? Think about it. The ratings have been down in recent years. Fans complain about lack of defense, too many three-pointers, not enough intensity in regular season games. There's a growing sentiment that something has been lost in the evolution of the game. Gary Payton is tapping into that sentiment. He's giving voice to what a lot of fans, especially older fans, have been feeling for years, and that's why his comments are resonating so strongly. Now, let's look at some actual facts that support what Gary is saying, because this isn't just emotional rambling. In the 1995-1996 season, Gary Payton played 81 of 82 games. Michael Jordan played 82 of 82. The top stars in the league rarely sat out. Fast forward to today, and LeBron has missed significant stretches for rest, despite being in incredible physical condition. The average fouls per game in the 1990s was significantly higher than today, meaning more physical contact was allowed. The pace was slower, the defense was tighter, and you had to earn every bucket. Three-point attempts have skyrocketed in the modern era, meaning less physical paint play and more perimeter shooting, a style that benefits finesse players over physical enforcers. These aren't opinions, these are facts, and they lend credibility to what Gary is saying about the differences between eras. But here's where it gets balanced. Not everyone agrees with Gary. Several former players have come out and said that LeBron would dominate in any era because of his unique combination of size, skill, and basketball IQ. One anonymous former 90s player told reporters, "GP is my guy, but LeBron is different. He's 6'9", can handle the ball like a guard, has court vision like Magic, and is strong enough to play in the post. That's not era-dependent, that's just greatness." Another former player added, "The physicality argument is overblown. LeBron has been to the finals 10 times. You think he hasn't dealt with physical play? Come on." So there are two sides here, and both have legitimate points, but the fact remains, Gary Payton's comments have exposed a massive divide in how we evaluate basketball greatness, and that divide is not going anywhere. The media immediately went into a frenzy. ESPN dedicated entire segments to the Gary Payton versus LeBron debate. First Take, Undisputed, and every other sports talk show milked it for every second of airtime they could get. Stephen A. Smith, never one to miss a chance to be loud and opinionated, declared that Gary Payton was absolutely right and that LeBron's legacy has been inflated by a softer era. Meanwhile, Skip Bayless, who's made a career out of LeBron criticism, was practically doing backflips celebrating Gary's comments. But the really interesting reactions came from current players. And they were careful, very careful, because here's the thing. Current players don't want to disrespect a legend like Gary Payton, but they also don't want to throw LeBron under the bus, so their responses were masterclasses in political correctness. One young all-star said, "I have nothing but respect for both Gary and Bron. Different eras, different rules, but greatness is greatness." Another current player posted on social media, "The game has evolved. That's all I'll say." Notice what they're not doing? They're not defending LeBron aggressively. They're not calling Gary out for being wrong. They're dancing around the topic because they know that no matter what they say, they're going to anger somebody. But the fan reaction? That's where things got truly wild. The generational divide in basketball culture has never been more visible. Go to any basketball forum, any social media platform, any sports bar, and you'll find people passionately arguing both sides. The older generation, let's call them 35 and up, largely side with Gary. They remember watching those 90s games. They remember the physicality, the rivalries, the intensity. And when they compare that to today's game, they see a massive difference. The younger generation, roughly 30 and under, think Gary is a hater. They've grown up watching LeBron dominate, watching him carry teams to the finals, watching him put up incredible statistics year after year. To them, LeBron is the GOAT, and anyone who says otherwise is just clinging to the past. And here's why this debate won't die down anytime soon. Both sides genuinely believe they're right. This isn't a situation where one side is clearly wrong and just being stubborn. There are legitimate arguments on both sides, which means this conversation will continue for years, possibly decades. But there's another layer to this that's going largely unnoticed. What does this mean for LeBron's GOAT argument? LeBron has spent the better part of his career trying to catch Michael Jordan. He's chased rings, statistics, longevity records, everything he can do to build a case that he's the greatest basketball player to ever live. And for a while, that argument was gaining serious traction. LeBron was winning people over, especially younger fans who never saw Jordan play. The gap between LeBron and Jordan in the GOAT debate was narrowing. But Gary Payton's comments have thrown a wrench into that momentum, because now there's a loud, credible voice saying, wait a minute, let's consider the context, let's consider the era, let's consider the fact that LeBron has played in a significantly easier defensive environment than Jordan did. And once that seed of doubt is planted, it grows. People start looking at LeBron's finals record differently. They start questioning whether his longevity stats matter as much when he's had the benefit of load management. They start wondering if his dominance would truly translate to a more physical era. None of this means LeBron isn't great, he is, but it does complicate the GOAT conversation in ways that his supporters weren't prepared for. And then there's the big question that everyone is asking: will LeBron respond? So far, he hasn't, and every day that passes without a response makes people more curious. Some think his silence is strategic, don't give the story more fuel. Others think he genuinely doesn't have a good comeback because deep down he knows Gary has a point. Either way, the basketball world is waiting, and the longer LeBron stays quiet, the louder Gary Payton's words echo. Let's zoom out for a second, because this Gary Payton versus LeBron James situation, it's about so much more than just two basketball personalities going at each other. This is about eras, evolution, respect, and how we define greatness in sports. At its core, this debate is asking a fundamental question. When we compare players across different eras, how much do we account for the differences in the game itself? It's not a simple question, because on one hand, you can argue that greatness transcends eras, that a truly great player would dominate no matter when or where they played. Michael Jordan in the 90s or the 2020s, still the best. Magic Johnson in the 80s or today, still incredible. But on the other hand, you have to acknowledge that the game has changed dramatically. The rules are different. The style of play is different. The entire culture around the sport is different. And those differences matter when you're trying to crown someone as the undisputed greatest of all time. Gary Payton represents a generation of players who feel like their contributions, their style of play, and their era of basketball is being disrespected by modern fans and media who only want to celebrate what's happening right now. They see analysts putting LeBron above Jordan, and it feels like their era is being erased from history. We laid the foundation for what these guys are doing now, one former 90s player said recently. And it feels like nobody wants to acknowledge that. Everybody just wants to crown the current guy as the best ever without understanding what it took to build this league. That's a valid perspective. The players from the 80s and 90s played in an era that saved the NBA. The Magic-Bird rivalry rescued the league from obscurity. The Jordan era turned basketball into a global phenomenon. Those players literally built the foundation that allows LeBron to be a billionaire athlete today. So when younger fans dismiss them as old heads who can't accept change, it stings because they're not just defending their era, they're defending their legacy. But here's the other side. The game has evolved, and that's not a bad thing. Basketball today is more skilled, more strategic, and more globally diverse than it's ever been. Players can do things now that were unthinkable in the 90s. The level of shooting, ball handling, and basketball IQ has skyrocketed. LeBron James is a product of that evolution. He's 6'9", can run the point guard position, defend multiple positions, score from anywhere on the floor, and has a basketball mind that allows him to quarterback an offense like few players in history. That's not era-dependent. That's just exceptional. So who's right? Honestly, both sides have valid points, and both sides are getting some things wrong. Gary Payton is right that the game was more physical in his era and that load management culture has changed the way we view player availability. He's right that LeBron has benefited from rule changes that favor offensive players. Those are facts. But Gary might be underestimating how good LeBron actually is. LeBron's size, strength, and skill set are so unique that it's hard to imagine any era where he wouldn't be dominant. Would he average 27-7-7 in the 90s? Maybe not, but would he still be a superstar? Almost certainly. On the flip side, LeBron's fans need to acknowledge that context matters. You can't just look at stats and rings without understanding the environment those numbers were produced in. Jordan's 6 rings in a more competitive, physical era might actually be more impressive than LeBron's 4. Now, 5 if you count the most recent one, but that's still being debated. The truth is, somewhere in the middle, but nobody wants to live in the middle anymore. Everybody wants their guy to be undisputed. Everybody wants a clear answer, and that's just not realistic when comparing across eras. What this whole situation has really exposed is a fundamental tension in sports culture. We want to crown the GOAT, but we can't agree on the criteria. Is it rings? Is it longevity? Is it peak performance? Is it the level of competition? Is it the era you played in? Until we can agree on what actually makes someone the greatest, these debates will continue. And honestly, maybe that's okay. Maybe the debate itself is what makes sports so compelling. Gary Payton exploded on LeBron in a way that nobody saw coming, and the shockwaves are still being felt across the basketball world. He questioned LeBron's toughness, his ability to survive in a more physical era, and ultimately whether he deserves to be in the GOAT conversation with players like Michael Jordan. The response has been massive, divided, and passionate. Fans are taking sides, media personalities are debating it endlessly, and LeBron? He's stayed silent, which only makes the whole situation more intriguing. But here's the real question, and this is what you need to think about. If LeBron James was dropped into a game from 1995, same rules, same physicality, same intensity, would he truly dominate the way he has in the modern era? Or would Gary Payton be proven right? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. Don't hold back. Are you Team Gary or Team LeBron? And more importantly, why? If you want more unfiltered basketball drama, controversial takes, and the stories that the mainstream media won't touch, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.